There are less than 24 hours until the MLB trade deadline, and the rumors continue to swirl. But Dave Dombrowski and the Philadelphia Phillies have yet to officially jump in the waters and make any sort of move to upgrade this roster. But could their missing piece be standing right across the field from him in this current series against the Chicago White Sox? I do want to dive into the latest, why Luis Robert Jr. might be the guy that is the top of the Phillies wish list, as well as all the other reports that I do want to dive into. We have yet to see any moves made. The wheels are turning around the MLB. The teams are upgrading. The Mets are getting in the mix. Plenty of teams are having some roster turnover, but we have not yet seen it from the Phillies at the point of this recording. I will note that shortly before I popped on here to record, we did get Max Kepler scratched from the lineup for Game 3 against the Chicago White Sox there. A triceps issue is what is being referred to as. Nothing of substance that we know regarding the status of him or if this is trade related to this point. I am recording this right around first pitch of the Phillies versus White Sox game for Game 3 of the series, so we'll see if anything goes down, but do want to touch on the latest, and we'll be sure to jump on if any updates do come tonight. Now, the first report that I do want to jump into is from Francis Romero here, who says, according to industry sources, the Mets and Phillies are considered the frontrunners to land White Sox outfielder Luis Robert Jr. And to add to this a little, this has been a familiar name that we've heard mentioned, that Buster Olney also getting in the mix, saying that the Phillies trade deadline news, quote, the Phillies need a high-end bullpen pitcher, but are also in the mix for Luis Robert Jr. Now, this is a guy we've talked about plenty on this channel and in Philly circles for over a year to this point, over a full calendar year. This has been a guy that has been on the Philadelphia radar. He is making quite an impressive impression across this series, and I do think he falls in the category of a guy who desperately needs a change of scenery here. Now, to highlight what he's brought to the table this year, it isn't going to be anything that blows you away. That to this point, the 27-year-old has produced 11 home runs, 43 RBIs, has struck out 98 times with just 61 hits across his first 296 at-bats, a 348 slugging percentage, a 295 on-base percentage, hitting a hair over 200 there. It has not been Luis Robert Jr.'s best season by any means, but we have seen flashes of what he can be. And in fairness to Luis Robert Jr., it is tough times out there playing for the Chicago White Sox. That isn't exactly an organization that inspires you to get up and compete in the way that I do think the situation would be quite drastically different in Philadelphia. And I know I've given him props for this before, but I do kind of like the way that his mentality has shown through. That he had a quote a couple months ago basically saying, I don't even know who would want to trade with me based on the way that I'm currently playing. And I do think that he's taken a bit of accountability there. But the bottom line is, if the Phillies make this type of move, that is going to be a guy that they're counting on to deliver. Now, the reason that I've kind of talked myself into this, and there are no perfect options at the trade deadline. Each of these guys comes with their individual baggage, and there is obviously the risk reward that you are weighing for what list of prospects does it take to acquire each player. But when I'm speaking about why I've talked myself into this, is I did want to pull this up coming from Matt Gelb here, that he writes, though the offense has clicked in July, it's not because of the outfield. Phillies outfielders have a .566 OPS this month that ranks 29th in baseball. It's a .645 OPS since June 1st, 28th in baseball. The outfield is 27th in baseball since May 1st with a .661 OPS. Now, obviously, OPS is not the end-all, be-all for how we're grading players here. But when you also factor in some of the defensive shortcomings that comes with this current group, we've seen Kyle Schwarber back in left field in short stints here. Nick Castellanos, we know the deal from a defensive standpoint. That'll give you what he's got. But what he's got is just not going to be a mobile right fielder, a guy that can cover a lot of ground out there. When that is the case and you are not pulling your weight on the offensive side of things, it's a tough conversation to have. And this is not me here chasing Nick Castellanos out of town. In fact, I feel very much the opposite, that I would prefer that is a guy who goes to postseason battle with this current Phillies crew. But the bottom line is Dave Dombrowski needs to get active here. The realization that I've sat on as we've continued to hear these rumors swirl throughout the course of the day, it's time to do something. I've been arguing with our guy Luke Arcaney over text all day about the value of prospects. I'm at the point where if this trade deadline comes and goes and there is not a notable trade made by Dave Dombrowski, I think it's a fireable offense. I think this team is so close that they are owed to give them the best possible chance of succeeding in a postseason standpoint. And if we want to be truthful right now, I don't think Dave Dombrowski has done that at the deadline across his tenure. Now, what is so strange to me about this was when you think of the reputation of Double D, of Dave Dombrowski through the years, that is where he is at his best. I do wonder if there is a bit of a split from kind of an ownership perspective from John Middleton, who's obviously very wanting his trophy back and is quite expressive in his belief of that. But we also think about the cycle of this Phillies franchise overall. That there were the great times when they won the 2008 World Series, when they had the Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, Cole Hamels, that little core of Phillies baseball, and then they went all in to continue to compete with that, and the farm system was empty. I do think that's something that they are trying actively to avoid. And again, not all prospects are created equal. And Andrew Painter is the number one guy here that I do think deserves to be viewed in different light than all these other guys. But I'm willing to sacrifice whatever the 2032 season of Aiden Miller has in store for a clearer chance at a World Series this year. This Phillies team is very good. This Phillies team is going to be in the mix. They are true contenders in the National League, but you got to do your due diligence and complete the puzzle here. Now, Luis Robert Jr. is not the only name that we've heard the Phillies connected to. And I also did want to pull up a couple of these here. Oops, as I pull up this side of things here. Did want to pull up with Mason Miller being involved in the report here. So we do have this coming out. And for Mason Miller specifically, that we do have is that the Phillies, Yankees, and Mets are among the teams involved in talks for Mason Miller. And why this is interesting is this is now twice now that we do see Mason Miller and the Mets being involved in players the Phillies are also interested in. This is where the conversation gets a bit difficult, is not only are you just negotiating for the sake of bettering your team, but you got to be looking over your shoulder. The New York Mets are a team that mean business. They knocked you out of last year's playoffs and have only gotten better since that point. That they've added Juan Soto. They went out and got a high leverage reliever, a pretty sick underarm type pitcher, a submarine type pitcher that I think is going to be a problem for this Phillies team. When you're negotiating for the same guys, that carries a bit of additional weight. We've also seen this guy making plenty of news here, and I do respect the troll job of the fake hugs that he did put in the Twins bullpen here. But, quote, the Minnesota Twins are expected to trade closer Jhoan Duran by the end of the day, with Los Angeles Dodgers in strong pursuit. Quote, the Twins have also been in heavy discussions with the Phillies, but have not lowered their asking price of prize pitching prospect Andrew Painter. Would you trade Andrew Painter for 27-year-old closer Jhoan Duran? And as much as I do like Duran, my answer would be no to that one there, that I do think that is too steep of a bargain to pull unless you're getting a top prospect back from the Twins on top of that there. That it would be very nice to have a team-controlled closer for several years now. I don't think that is worth sacrificing whatever the future is for Andrew Painter, and I've mentioned this plenty, but we've seen this swing back in the investment and belief in starting pitching, and that has kind of become the identity of this current Phillies team. The last point that I did want to end with here is I think we're playing a little bit more of a dangerous game with the locker room than I think we've been led on to believe. Obviously, we had Bryce Harper being quite expressive to the MLB commissioner himself. But what if that energy is being sent towards Dave Dombrowski? We have this quote coming out here from Jim Salisbury saying, quote, there will be some very disappointing veterans if the Phillies do not make a big acquisition ahead of tomorrow's MLB trade deadline. Salisbury adds, quote, I'll tell you this, the players that I've talked to, they want to see a move. They want to see a move made. They like to see a bat come in. They like to see a big arm come in. They are watching this thing closely, and there will be some very disappointed veterans if there is not significant improvement made. I think this is the right mentality from this Phillies team. That, again, the biggest critique that I would have is I do think there's some complacency that can be seen on this roster for stretches here, and I haven't felt that as strongly of late, but certainly in the early parts of the season. Get some new blood in this franchise. Do whatever you can do to improve your current weaknesses, which are evident. It is the outfield production. It is the relief pitching. That there is the core of this Phillies team is good enough, but you got to round it out with the pieces along the edge. And Dave Dombrowski's got to step up on and deliver. There is a lot of pressure on the Phillies president of baseball operations, the general manager himself in Dombrowski, to deliver in this next less than 24-hour period. It's got to happen, or we're playing a dangerous game with how quickly this window is closing. The Mets are going to continue to get better. Other teams in the National League are going to improve. The Atlanta Braves aren't just going to be off the radar moving forward next year. The Dodgers are very much in the mix. It's going to be a tough out, a tough team to battle even after there are upgrades made to this Phillies roster. So, Dave, your legacy is a bit on the line, I feel. I think this is the most important trade deadline of this current Phillies era, and Dave has to absolutely nail this one. So we'll see what happens over the next day here. Still a lot to get into, and I'll be right back popping on and breaking things down on this channel whenever that action does go down. Also, stay tuned. Me and Luke Arcana are going to be going live tomorrow night, breaking everything down, talking about how the trade deadline did resolve itself for a work thing. Weren't able to exactly get a live for the tail end of the deadline there, but we'll be hopping on after the fact and breaking down our reactions, laying out expectations for this team from a postseason standpoint. So let me know what you guys think about all this. Give me your thoughts on Luis Robert Jr. in the comments there. Any other thoughts on predictions and the one guy or one position that you fully believe the Phillies cannot walk away without? Would love to hear it below. Appreciate each and one of you guys tuning in this video as always. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here, and I'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.